Hey, shalom, everybody. Y'all sit tight. Fixing to do a great testimony of a guy who did some preaching. Was raised by his grandfather. Well, maybe not raised by him, but he spent a lot of time with, I think he said like 5 years. You'll find out. But you don't want to miss this. This is another great testimony. So hang tight because we are going to have a good time. So sit tight. We'll be right back. Welcome to TORAH Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Testimony Tuesdays. Why would a Christian preacher, teacher, preacher's kid, you name it, why would they leave Jesus behind? You're going to find out. I'd like to welcome to you to the show, Israel Escobedo. I hope I'm saying that right. Oh, sorry, hang on one second. Tell us your name again. Escobedo. I was close, not great with it, but hey, that's okay. That's all right. Welcome to the show, Israel. It's a pleasure having you on, and thanks for.
Thank you.
It's kind of semi-short notice, a couple weeks, but I'm just glad your availability worked out for us. So again, thank you for that, and looking forward to hearing your story. You and I spoke a little bit before the show, and I learned some really cool stuff about you, and so. Yeah, welcome, man. I'll tell you what, it's just a delight. I'm going to have to tell you and everybody out there who's watching, there's so many of these testimonies that are coming in when people have found out that I'm actually doing testimonies for people who were teachers or preachers' kids or preachers' wives or whatever, anything in that realm, not just the my wife calls them C&E Christians at Christmas and Easter, but they were people who were serious about it, studied their history, are actually leaving Christianity behind, and this is yet another one. So welcome, Israel. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So I don't know where to begin.
That's okay. If you want, I'll just probe you with some questions, and you can just kind of answer those. In fact, I probably should pull up the YouTube channel in case there are some other questions out there. Let me get rid of that real fast. And I'll just start with a few questions, and we'll see. Let's see, my screen is zoomed in too much. There's 11 people out there watching. Lori, welcome. Amy, Beanie, Skeptical Jed, Mia, Kelsey Lynn, Mimi, Shmuel, it's good to see you guys. So basically, your earliest memory of your childhood in connection with Christianity. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, my grandfather in Mexico, he was a minister at this church. It was called Temple Bethel. I guess they named it as a Hebrew temple, but it was still a church. And I was exposed early in my life to Christianity, to Jesus. He's the one who introduced, God to us through my brothers, my family, and his, I don't know how many nephews, grandchildren, great-grandchildren after him. There's a whole bunch of us. But the first few years, nothing Hebrew, nothing Jewish that I was exposed to, was just strictly Christian. Most of my life, that's what I was into. As soon as my dad moved us to Fort Worth at a young age, we were exposed to Catholicism, the Catholic Church. My dad's great uncle, and we went there a couple of times. We didn't go there every Sunday, but I was exposed to the Virgin Mary, the Trinity, and all that stuff that they teach. But I was still young. I didn't know what I was doing. But after that, my mom met this other lady, and she took us to a Jehovah's Witness, Jehovah's Witness church, and we went there a couple of times, but nothing that we would stay there for a long time. But and then she met another coworker lady, a friend of hers, and then we got into the Pentecostal church. That's where I mostly ended up studying and learning the Bible, the Christian Bible from Pentecostal. And we were there. I was there since I was up to 22 years old. After my dad passed away in 1994, I left the church, not because he died, but because I started seeing stuff that the church, I didn't have that desire to go to church anymore. It's just some of the teachings was not what I was, I wasn't feeling, I wasn't believing it no more.
Right.
And I was always into history at a young age. Since elementary, my passion was history and archaeology. I always wanted to be an archaeologist. And so I started studying the scriptures. Even if starting from Genesis chapter 1, I ended up reading it on my own at home. This was before I got married. That was a few years before I got married. And
do you remember
and
during your studies, do you remember at a point in time where people told you just start with the Gospels and just start from there?
Yeah.
And I mean, how'd that make you feel? I mean, because to me, I'm thinking somebody gives me a book and say, "Hey, start right there in the middle." That, I mean, really?
Yeah.
Does that?
Yes. I actually did a couple of services at the church while I was still in church. I guess I was in my teen years, 16, 17 years old. I actually did a service. They video recorded it. I was preaching on the youth Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was always into prophecies, so I was prophesying what Jesus said, what Revelations and the generation of vipers. So I was really throwing the rocks at them.
Wow.
And I didn't know what I was saying back then. I had no knowledge of Torah, no knowledge. I knew about Moses, I knew about the Ten Commandments, but I hadn't really got into them as in a Hebrew mindset, in a Hebrew environment. So even at a young age, I was attracted to the movie The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston.
Oh yeah,
that's always been my favorite movie, even as a Christian. So I don't know if that was God was telling me to, look at Moses, look at the Ten Commandments. But even as a Christian, I always every Easter it would be on TV, and I would watch it. Man, I would miss it every year. But the thing is, I was always intrigued with the story of Moses more than Jesus, even as a Christian. I don't know why, but
nice.
I was kind of like, my brothers kept shoving me to go to church on Sundays when I was still in elementary and middle school, and I was a rebellious. I was kind of like the black sheep in the Christian home,
right?
Because I hate at one time I hate going to church on Sundays. I hated Sundays, and now I know why.
Right. Okay, so what led you? I'm going to be jumping around a little bit. I kind of always do with people, but what was the big thing that tipped your bucket over, like scripturally, that caused the biggest problem for you in your willingness to accept the Christian Messiah, the New Testament Messiah figure, and the New Testament storyline?
Oh, once I started researching more about my Jewish history, my family Jewish history, because I discovered that too from a family reunion that we were having back in 2008, I believe, 2008. And I had stopped going to church, but I was still seeing a Messianic rabbi from 2008 to, I started in 2008 seeing the Messianic rabbi. But at that time I was still doubting the church. But I was also mixing with Yeshua. Now I call it Yeshua. I didn't call it Jesus no more.
Right.
So at that time I didn't know, because I thought because there's no J in Hebrew language, it's not Jesus. Jesus is Greek.
Right.
In a way, I was slowly heading towards Orthodox, because at that time I was stripping away Christianity, but at the same time I started digging more into the Messianic. And I just realized it's the same thing. They just changed names.
I was going to ask you that. How did it make you feel now, looking back? You went from Christianity to Messianic, which is the same thing I did. I was in Christianity for years and years and years. Pastors, everybody knows my story. And then I spent about 3-4 years as a Messianic. Yeah. So I mean, we have kind of similar paths. Now that you're out of it and you've been able to look back at that Messianic movement, how does that make you feel? What's your opinion of the Messianic movement?
Oh, it's just a cover up. It's what Messianic is. It's Christianity with dressed up as
Right.
Jewish. It's all it is. It's
Right.
just It's artificial.
Agreed.
It's not the real. It's not the Jewish Orthodox teaching. It's just artificial. It's not real.
It's another
It's just
replacement, right? Another
yeah,
replacement theology, in a way.
yeah. And when I found that, when I discovered that this Messianic rabbi, uh, I started losing interest with him. I had already moved to Brownsville. This was 2008, so he would come from Fort Worth to visit me. We would have the Passover Seder, but as in a Messianic way. But the final year he came, I just nah, it's not right. It's the same dude, it's the same guy, same Jesus. It's just they teach more. They put the Jewish flavor to it, but it's still Christian. And so I left from Christianity to Messianic, and we just broke ties. And then I was on my own. Several years went by. I was on my own trying to search after I kind of like left Messianic, but I was still hold on to Yeshua because I was still feared. I had that fear that I'm going to hell.
Right.
If I leave the Messiah, because I still had Christianity inside of me. I still had thinking like a Messianic and a Christian. I hadn't left it completely. So I had that fear in my heart. I didn't want to go to hell, but I need some answers. And I told my wife one time, I'm tired of this. If I have to become an Orthodox Jew, then let it be. I told my wife that's my exact words. And when I was searching through YouTube, looking for answers to ask a rabbi, because I didn't know any rabbis in Brownsville. I didn't know nobody. And so I started looking on YouTube, rabbi versus a Christian pastor, for debates.
Right.
And I just punched it up, and boom, it was Rabbi Locks in his video answer pastor. And when I was watching it, man, once it got to a certain point of the video, when he said what he said, no one can die for the sins of others.
Right.
And I put pause, hold it, rewind. I had to rewind like 10 times to man, did I hear that right? No one can die for the sins of others. So that's what did it for me. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Right. And after that, man, I saw Rabbi Tovia Singer, Rabbi Skobac, and it's just I've been studying with them ever since. It's been 10 years since I've been watching them.
Okay, so it's
been a long journey.
What was the biggest problem that you had with Christianity?
What was that?
What was the biggest problem that you had with Christianity?
Well, it started with a certain person, well, it was mostly this guy, but he's now the pastor of the church where my brothers goes. But in the youth class, we kind of like clashed. He didn't like me for a reason, and he just. But that was one of the things. But the teaching itself.
Yeah, I mean, theologically speaking, what was the biggest theological problem with Christianity in your mind?
It was just the Trinity, and how can there be three gods? And they replaced Israel. That the church is the new Israel, and the physical Israel, God has replaced them. That was a major thing that I didn't agree with.
Right.
Because when I started studying the Bible in my home before I got married, I noticed Genesis 12:3. And it says Hashem will bless those who bless thee and curse those that curses Israel. So how can Hashem replace Israel if he's saying in Genesis 12:3 that he would bless those who bless Israel? So that's what the replacement replacement theology. That's what also did it for me to walk out of the church. It's just it didn't match up to what God was saying in the Tanakh.
Right. That makes so much sense. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad you were able to stop in tonight, and I appreciate everybody tuning in. And just you guys, if you don't know Israel on Facebook, send them a friend request. This is a community. It's a much larger community than we all first thought, and so you guys reach out to each other and stay tuned each week. We're going to try to pull off another video each week, 15 minutes to 30, 45, however long it goes, depending on how the flow of things go. But it's going to happen every week. So, Israel, man, you're a great guy, and it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure meeting you for sure, and hopefully we'll be able to keep in contact. So thank you so much, and thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you, Will.
You betcha. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you guys same time, same place next week for another Testimonial Tuesdays. Take care, everybody. Shalom, shalom.
All right. Shalom.